With Blue Link Plus, you can access your Hyundai Tucson Limited remotely. Doors unlocked, temperature set, lost car found.
There it is.
Get complimentary class-leading Blue Link Plus. Call 562-314-4603 for complete details.
Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
I'm Tim Fitzgerald at GoPowerCat.com.
And I'm Michael Swain of Fog.net.
This is a replay of WIBW show The Drive.
Here's this week's episode on the 24/7 Sports Podcast Network.
Good evening, Wildcat and Jayhawk fans, and welcome to Season 18 of The Drive, sponsored by Briggs Auto Group. I am Tim Fitzgerald at GoPowerCat.com. The man across the studio for me again this season is Michael Swain of Fog.net. How old were you 18 years ago when this show premiered?
7.
You can interact with us, maybe with crayons for Michael, on social media at facebook.com/The Drive Show, on Twitter at The Drive 13, and of course, answer our weekly poll question. My God, I feel old. Make your game predictions on our Twitter page. And remember, if you ever miss an episode of The Drive, you can listen to an audio-only version that will appear each Monday morning in the form of a podcast at both GoPowerCat and Fog.net. Man. We will start things off with our 2-minute drill. Michael, we got to remember to put those podcasts up. It's not easy to remember. The first segment of the 2-minute drill is sponsored by Vanderbilt's Your Work Boot Center.
All right, Fitz,
take it away.
Let's get some of your wisdom here. Kansas State won the Big 12 championship last season in football, but lost some key players to the NFL. Do you think Kansas State can make it to Arlington again this season?
Yeah, I do. I've got this kind of strong feeling about this team. They lost incredible Deuce Vaughn and Felix Anudike-Uzomah and, Julius Brent's one of those kind of cover corners you just don't find at the college level very often. But it appears they've answered a lot of these questions in camp. They've moved some guys around. They've got some new players coming in. And I think this team is poised for a big season. Michael, I kind of believe if you've got a veteran quarterback who can play at an elite level, K-State does, and I'll talk about Will Howard more in a while, and you have a veteran offensive line. Everyone returned on the offensive line. All the seniors took advantage of their COVID year to come back as a 6-year. And Cooper Beebe, the best lineman maybe in the country, decided to come back one more season so he could play with his brother. They've got that in place, plus Taylor Portier comes back from injury, so they essentially have 6 returning starters. You get that into the mix, and I think K-State has the ability to score points with about anyone. Running back will be a concern, but I think the 2 guys, Giddens and Ward, they have back there will be very adequate and will have their own sense of how they fit into this offense. Receivers, Keegan Johnson comes in out of Iowa, and they're really high about him. Defensively, they've just got some young players that are ready to step in. And the return also of Daniel Green for his 6th season at middle linebacker was a little bit of a surprise. This team has had some questions along different parts of maybe the back end of the defense. But from everything we're hearing in practice from the coaches, and it doesn't just sound like false confidence, they really believe in what they have. It's going to be an early challenge for this team. Troy comes in and they're outstanding. They go to Missouri. They're not outstanding, but they'll be fired up after getting trounced last year. And they have UCF coming into Manhattan to open Big 12 play. It's going to be a very interesting schedule, a very interesting venture through this conference with some new opponents. And unfortunately for K-State, but fortunately for Oklahoma, the Sooners aren't on the Wildcat schedule.
I think you hit the nail on the head there, Fitz, right? You look at the important positions in college football, right? Offensive line, being able to protect the quarterback, and the quarterback Kansas State has is pretty darn good as well. I agree. I think K-State will be a contender to make it back to Arlington.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun year in Big 12 football, including for Kansas. And Michael, you were at Kansas's football fall camp practices earlier this month. What will fans see from the Jayhawks this fall?
Well, you know it's going to be another exciting offense. If you look at the returning production for Kansas, they return the most production on the offensive side of the ball compared to any team in the country. All the guys are back. And really the position you're looking at now taking the next step forward, I think, is the offensive line, where I think at times last season you saw Kansas have an explosive offense, right? Through the air, on the ground, but the down-to-down consistency wasn't always there. The left tackle, Earl Bostic, is now with the Dallas Cowboys in training camp, and Dominic Pooney, who was the left guard last year and 2 years ago was playing as the left tackle for Central Missouri, he's going to be the left tackle for Kansas this year. That has opened a spot at left guard where I think a great story, Armaje Reed-Adams, is going to come in and start. He arrived at Kansas 380 pounds. He's lost 50 pounds. He's athletic. He's got a 7-foot wingspan at 6'5", 330 pounds. If you're looking for Kansas to be a more physical team up front, to add to all the other elements of that returning production, someone like Armaje is going to help Kansas do that. Now, I think a lot of fans probably have questions about special teams. That was a huge issue last season. Fitz, I think you know this guy, Sean Schneider, came to Kansas over the offseason to help fix some of those issues. KU went down under to Australia to get an Australian rules punter who will potentially help elevate that group to where maybe Kansas isn't losing field position if the offense sputters out. The field goal kicking game, Jacob Borchilla is now in the SEC. They brought in Seth Keller from Texas State, who if he kicked in the Big 12 last season, he would have been the third best kicker in the conference. So you're looking at the offense returning a bunch of production, and they're going to take a step forward potentially on the offensive line, being more physical, adding someone like Armaje Reed-Adams. Special teams should be better. The big question is going to be defense. I'm sure we'll talk about that in a minute, but overall, this should be another exciting Kansas team where fans can tune in each week and not really know what's going to happen. I think that's a really good position for the Jayhawks to be in, especially compared to past seasons.
This is going to be such a fun season for football in the state of Kansas, and I truly believe, this isn't hyperbole, that the state of Kansas has the two best quarterbacks in the Big 12. And I don't think it's that close, but they're not playing at Oklahoma and Texas, which seems to get all the headlines. I'll take Daniels and Howard over Gabriel and Ewers any day. Any day.
Yeah, it's almost like people didn't watch Quinn Ewers last year.
Yeah, I did. And no, no.
Exactly. All right, let's move on. It's obviously the first season of the new look Big 12 with 4 newcomers on board. Fitz, what interests you most about the upcoming football season in the Big 12?
How these teams will just kind of fit into the cycle of games. You know what I mean? Will they hold up over the long run? If you're Houston or Cincinnati or UCF coming out of the American, you just haven't seen the relentless schedule in the Big 12. But we know UCF can compete right away if they, kind of come together. They certainly have the athletes. The timing for Cincy is just awful. Cincinnati comes in with a coaching change after such an incredible run by Luke Fickell. And so we'll see where they sit. Houston, I'm not real sure they're on solid footing right now, and they might have a very long, miserable first season, but maybe I'm totally wrong. And BYU's played at a really high level. They were down a little bit last year. But how will all of these teams adjust to that week in and week out grind of this conference, Michael? I don't know if they're quite ready for what they're about to get into, because it is brutal in the Big 12. It
really is, and I think you mentioned with UCF, I think UCF might be the most well-positioned team to hit the ground running in the Big 12, but in the trenches, they've not necessarily been recruiting or getting the talent acquisition at a Power 5 level. So what exactly does that acclimation process look like? Where BYU, I think in the trenches, right, BYU is going to be physical. They're going to be old and experienced, but at the skill position, do they have game changers out there? Obviously, BYU now has Keaton Slovis, who I think he's on his 5th school now in 5 years or something like that. So I'm fascinated too. I think for me, I look at Houston. Everything Dana Holgorsen said last year around that Kansas game was not positive about Houston's outlook going into the first year in the Big 12. And then Cincinnati, you look at them, right, so much turnover. What's that going to look like in the first year under Scott Satterfield? I think overall, you're looking at these teams, right? Traditionally, the jump up from being a G5 team to a Power 5 team is a tough jump. I think you're going to see some teams struggle, especially I think really in the latter half of the season once kind of that physical toll is really kind of set in.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting right out at the start with UCF coming in to Manhattan to open Big 12 play. We're going to find out a lot about both programs and where they're at. Well, now let's take a quick look at your poll question for the week. The poll questions are brought to you by Midland Exteriors. Love the home you live in. Call today for a free estimate.
All right, Fitz, this week's question is, do you like the look of the 16-team new Big 12? First answer, absolutely, yes. Second answer, not at all. And C, conference realignment stinks. Make sure you vote on our Twitter page and at the Drive 13. And that will do it for this half of the 2-minute drill.
I want to vote for all three. I'm going to vote for all three.
I'll go with C, Fitz. Okay. I like conference rivalries and not having it be ruined. But make sure you are following us on Twitter, and that will do it for this half of the 2-minute drill. But we'll be right back with more on KU and K-State on The Drive.
Getting the crew together isn't as easy as it used to be. We get it. Life comes at you fast. But trust us, your pals are desperate for a good hang. And when they hear you stock the party with drinks from Drizzly, they'll be banging down your door. Let Drizzly, the go-to app for drink delivery, take care of the supplies. All you need is an excuse. It doesn't even have to be a good one. It's your dog's birthday. The loquats are finally ripe. Whatever. With Drizzly, you can compare prices on a massive selection of beer, wine, and spirits and get them delivered straight to your door. Which means you can entice the crew to leave their houses without ever leaving yours. Whatever the occasion, download the Drizzly app or go to drizzly.com. That's DRIZLY.com today. Must be 21 plus, not available in all locations.
Welcome back to The Drive, fueled by BriggsAuto.com.
Welcome back as we continue our weekly 2-minute drill. This segment of the 2-minute drill sponsored by Copeland Insurance Agency, part of your community for more than 60 years.
All right, Fitz. Quarterback Will Howard started only 6 of K-State's 14 games last season, but is he poised for a huge season after what he showed last year?
He is. He's just such a different personality this year in practice. You know, this is the first time he's come in as the guy, as QB1, and he clearly is. And he's all reports are he's playing at an even higher level. If you extrapolate his stats from last year over the course of an entire season, he's going to throw about 30 touchdown passes for 3,000 yards. I mean, those are elite numbers for an offense that isn't, we're going to throw it every down. This is a balanced offense. He has the capability of just blowing the lid off the stats and kind of rewriting the passing records at Kansas State for a single season or the whole season. But when you're talking about Kansas State, you have to worry about QB injuries because this program can't seem to get through a season with a healthy quarterback. That happened last year. That's what opened the door for Will Howard when Adrian Martinez went down, and we didn't expect him to erupt into the player he is right now. I'm just really fired up about where he could end up being. He technically has another season. He went through that first year, the COVID season, playing as a true freshman, really not quite ready mentally or physically to play at this level. And he took his lessons for a couple of years that he applied to last year and just came out tossing it all over the field when he was pushed into duty at TCU. He's got some different weapons. He doesn't have the Deuce Vaughn crutch, but he does have that line to protect him. And I think if given time to operate, he will find receivers, but he does return Ben Sinnott, his big tight end, who turned into his favorite weapon. Those two have a little Mahomes-Kelsey thing going on that's pretty fun to watch. I think Will Howard, if he stays healthy, might just be the Big 12 Player of the Year in leading K-State back to Arlington. And we'll see if that all takes place. But if he's injured, well, it's going to be very fun to see who Coach Kleiman turns to. Jake Rubley, the guy that's been around for a few years, or Avery Johnson, the true freshman who is apparently lighting it up in practice.
Oh, that's interesting on Avery Johnson right there. I'm curious, Fitz, like you're talking about, right, the two comparisons, Jalen Daniels, and it sounds like a very similar story, right? COVID freshman should not be playing, all of a sudden now enters this season with the ability to really put up some huge numbers. I think it's interesting. Both in-state schools, right, got some similar quarterback dynamics going on.
Yeah, and they're both just so fun to watch. Well, everybody knows KU's defense was a weakness last season. Michael, do you think the Jayhawks will be better on defense this year? If so, where will the improvement come from?
You know, Fitz, it's one of these deals where I think at the start of camp, I was of the opinion that I'm not sure if the defense will be much improved, but it sounds like as camp has gone on, some of the questions that you had about this defense going into this year have been answered. And for me, you look at the defense, right? KU returns all three of its starting linebackers, all four of its defensive backs, and you're looking at a brand new defensive line. And that was where the big question was, is how is this defensive line going to come together? And by the sound of things, it's come together really well. Devin Phillips is a transfer from Colorado State. He's about 6'2", 325 pounds. He's explosive. He can move well. You look at someone like Tommy Dunn, who was with the program last year, taking the next step. Those two seem like they're going to start, but you've got DJ Withers as another defensive tackle behind him. He's 315 pounds, took on yoga during the offseason, and can move and bend really well. Some things that Kansas hasn't had at that defensive tackle spot in a long time. You look at the defensive end spots, Jeremy Robinson has always produced when he's gotten the opportunity. Now it's his chance to start and have a breakout season. I'd bet on that happening. And really the big question was going to be what's going to happen at the weak side defensive end spot. Obviously we saw Lonnie Phelps dominate there last year. KU brought in a few different transfers, and it sounds like Austin Booker, the transfer from Minnesota, who's about 6'6", 245 pounds. He's had a great camp, and so he and Hayden Hatcher are probably going to split reps. And so all of a sudden you're looking now, this defensive line has athleticism, it's got guys that have high ceilings, and it's just going to be a question of what do those growing pains look like over the course of kind of the first 4 weeks of the season. At the beginning of camp, I thought those growing pains might be pretty painful, but it sounds like those players have really come along over the last month of practice, and now KU's going to go into the season with a much more athletic defensive line, a much more athletic linebacking core, and I think athleticism cures a lot of issues, especially in the Big 12, and it seems like KU has really improved there. And so for me, I look at the athleticism and what they did in the transfer portal on the defensive line, and I think you will see an improved defense this fall.
One of the things I like about how Lance Leipold is building this, he's kind of gone old school. I mean, yeah, he's using the transfer portal, but it's not like they're just magically making a breakthrough. They are methodically building the program with depth, young players, getting enough transfers in to help. I just think they're building it for the long haul, and that is remarkable considering the recent history of Kansas football.
Exactly. It's incredible what happens when you have a long-term plan.
Yeah, and he's the right guy at the right time. And now we step out of bounds, and Out of Bounds is brought to you by Darris Corner Market. We love local, and we are local for you.
All right, Fitz, realignment has struck again. The Pac-12 is dissolving, and the Big 12 is set to add both Arizona schools, Colorado and Utah. What do you think about the future of the Big 12?
Well, I think I'll be relocating to Arizona so I can have that year-round tan. I'll be doing this show from, my cabin. I don't even know why I'd have a cabin in Arizona. But I'm fired up, man. This is great additions. It's great to have Colorado back. I was so reluctant about Colorado coming back. It was like down the list for me. But I think the hiring of Deion Sanders, Coach Prime, makes it obvious they're getting serious about football again, even if he's different character. But I think they're great. It's really nice regionally for the conference. And it'll be very interesting to see if this is the end of it. I don't think it is. I think we've got more Eastern stuff coming, and somehow, some way. They said the Big 12 wouldn't survive a couple years ago, and now the Big 12 is poised to be the third conference permanently behind the SEC and Big 10. And I just think it's remarkable what, again, good leadership can do for you. They came in, once they lost Texas, Oklahoma, they attacked this with a plan. And they have worked through that plan, and now they went from 8 schools that a lot of national media just wished would all go away to being a 16-team conference that spans every time zone. It's incredible.
It really is. And the part I love about it is it's regional.
Right.
And I think I mentioned that at the end of the last segment, right? You look at what's happening at the Big Ten, the SEC, it's kind of getting away from being regional, and I think that's what makes college football, college sports so fun. And you look at on a map, right, what all these schools look like. It's very condensed, and you got some East Coast action, and I think you're right. That ECC media rights deal, whenever that starts to unfold, I think you're going to see a lot more movement, because it does not sound like some of those tenured ACC schools are too happy with the way things are going right now.
You know, the big challenge for this conference is they solved the West Virginia island. Mm-hmm. Then they created the BYU island, and they've solved that now. And by the way, BYU and Utah have the most heated rivalry maybe in college athletics, so it's going to be very entertaining. But now it's UCF, Central Florida, sitting there kind of alone, and I hope with the next round they can solve that and tie them better to the rest of the conference.
Yep, I think you're spot on. Fitz.
Now let's hear from the fans, and our fan question is sponsored by Meadowlark Retirement. Retirement awaits in Manhattan, where you can live your way every day. I totally butchered that. Our fan question this week is, what new Big 12 road trip are you most interested in? I butchered that too. Dale in Topeka. Where are you ready to go, Mike? Let's go.
I'll say Provo. I don't really like Utah, but I've heard so many things about Provo and seeing a night game there. Like, if that ever happens, I'd be very, very excited for that. What about you?
Yeah, that's exactly my answer. Although I think getting down to Tempe is going to be fun too. Actually, I want to see the environment in Salt Lake City at Utah when that comes around. But yeah, Provo for me too. It's interesting we both picked that. Utah's a beautiful state, so you just, unless you want to drink. But it's just a fun place to be, and this conference is going to be very cool to cover, but also, brother, it got expensive. Mm-hmm. You were going to be flying all over the place.
All right, well, remember to ask us your questions on our Facebook page and on Twitter @TheDrive13. When we return, we will take a look at our predictions here on The Drive.
The NFL regular season is wrapping up, but there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. The app is so easy to use, and there are so many different ways to bet, like live same-game parlays. Find bets in the new Explore tab. Make a parlay in the Parlay Hub, the best way to find popular parlays, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/247 and make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.
Must be 21 plus and present in Arizona, Colorado, Connecticut, Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, Kansas, Kentucky, Louisiana, permitted parishes only, Massachusetts, Maryland, Michigan, New Jersey, New York, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, or Wyoming. FanDuel is offering online sports wagering in Kansas under an agreement with Kansas Star Casino, LLC. First online real money wager only. $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG in Colorado, Iowa, Michigan, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Illinois, Kentucky, Tennessee, and Virginia. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT-STEP to 53342 in Arizona, 1-888-789-7777, or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut, 1-800-9-WITH-IT in Indiana, 1-800-522-4700, or visit ksgamblinghelp.com in Kansas, 1-877-770-STOP in Louisiana. Visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Visit 1-800-GAMBLER.net in West Virginia, or call 1-800-522-4700 in Wyoming. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York, or visit oasas.ny.gov/gambling. Standard text messaging rates apply. Sports betting is void in Georgia, Hawaii, Utah, and other states where prohibited.
Welcome back to The Drive, fueled by BriggsAuto.com.
It's time to head down the home stretch of this week's show, and now let's take a look at our predictions. And predictions are brought to you by Kites and Kites Aggieville Draft House. Meet your friends at Kites in the Draft House since 1954. Remember, Make your weekly predictions on our Twitter page at @TheDrive13. And it's a new season, and the slate is clean. Will the viewers pull out the win again and shame the hosts? We wore a cone of shame the entire offseason. It was horrible. Here are this week's picks. Off we go. K-State against SEMO, Southeast Missouri. We put K-State up there as a 24.5-point favorite. SEMO's pretty good. I'm kind of almost tempted to take them to cover that, but I'm not going to start that way, Michael. I'm picking K-State.
Yeah, I'll ride with K-State as well. Next up is Kansas versus Missouri State. We've got KU as a 21.5-point favorite. This feels like another 30-plus point win for KU if Jalen Daniels can be healthy.
Yeah, if the defense is so bad they can't cover that, then they've got worries for this season. Our last game of the week is the granddaddy in the Big 12 of opening games here. TCU against Colorado, a future conference game. TCU by 20.5. I do think they'll win by 21 or more.
I agree. I think TCU's going to roll them.
Yep. Again, make your predictions on our Twitter page at @TheDrive13. It's time for our On the Clock segment. On the Clock is sponsored by Carpet One, by Local for a strong local community. Michael Swain, talk.
There's some Australian fever going on in Lawrence. Both KU football and KU basketball welcomed people from down under to their program this offseason. For basketball, it's Johnny Furphy, an incredible prospect at 6'9". He burst onto the scene over the summer. He reclassified up and arrived in Lawrence 2 weekends ago. And then in football, there's the new Australian rules punter, Damon Greaves. Both of them should make an impact in their first year at Kansas, and a very exciting international flair going on in Lawrence.
That's kind of fun. I want an Australian co-host. Look, I'm going to bag on the Big 12 here a little bit. As much as they've done right, and this conference has done almost everything right, I'm not happy that Oklahoma isn't playing every old Big 8 team and Texas isn't playing every former Southwest Conference team. That's the way they should leave the conference, but K-State does not play Oklahoma to Oklahoma's advantage. And that's it for this week's edition of The Drive. We'll see you next week right here and all week on social media.
Call It What You Want is a brand new podcast part of the CBS Sports Golazo Network, covering every angle of the United States men's national team. I'm Jimmy Conrad, and I'll be joining Jesse Marsh and Charlie Davies every week for a passionate, informed, and unapologetic conversation about all things U.S. men's national team, like tactics, American players home and abroad, match previews and recaps, interviews, and more. As our boys get set to compete for hardware in the CONCACAF Nations League Finals, the Olympics, and the Copa America in 2024, Call It What You Want will be along for the ride to provide expert analysis and unfiltered opinions, so fasten your seatbelts. And don't forget to download and follow on the Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts.